Before he became Christopher Nolan's iconic Batman, Christian Bale was a swing-dancing hothead in a film you've probably never heard of. In 1993, Thomas Carter released a film about a group of young swing-dancing enthusiasts grappling with the rise of Nazism in Germany. Swing dancing is soon to be banned by the Nazi regime, and these boys are encouraged to join the Hitler Youth and leave their swing dancing behind. The film rather clumsily centers the lives of privileged German swing dancers as victims of the Nazi regime. And on the one hand, they certainly were. As the film itself points out, hundreds of swing dancers were sent away to concentration camps. But sometimes the tonality of these poor middle-class Germans doesn't come across great, and the reviews reflected this sentiment. The film wasn't super well received. I have to say, though, that I absolutely loved it. I'm super biased, though, because swing dancing is one of my favorite hobbies in the world, and I really enjoyed this film as a historical lesson. Is it a great film? Not necessarily. It's pretty cheesy.
It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Do I.
But what I think this film does really well is exemplify the way that fascism seduces even its most violent opposition. Christian Bale's character, Thomas Berger, starts out a proud member of the Swing Kids group. And this group isn't just a hobby club. The swing dancing movement in history was incredibly politically charged, and in many ways it still is. Swing dancing music was created by Black musicians, and in a racist, fascist world, their work became the theme song of resistance. Swing dancing clubs were often underground and were often connected with left-wing resistance movements.
In post-war Paris, the sound of liberation after the Nazi occupation was New Orleans jazz. Simone de Beauvoir, the existentialist philosopher, reported that Louis Armstrong's performance in 1946 made the youth mad with enthusiasm. In novels and essays, Josef Szkóreczki wrote about the liberating feeling of jazz under Nazi and Soviet-backed regimes, even documenting Nazi prohibitions of black musicians' excesses in tempo or in solo performances. Jazz cool was the American version of existential freedom called for by the French philosophers Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, and Simone de Beauvoir. Jazz cool concerned the recuperation of individuality in the arts against the century's totalitarian ideologies.
Thomas is one of the fiercest members of this resistance. He famously fights Nazis throughout the first half of the film, talking about how awful and disgusting Nazism is. But through various events of the film, the Swing Kid boys are eventually forced to join the Hitler Youth. Although they initially resist Nazism from within, eventually Thomas' character is slowly seduced by it. He's given a cool new Nazi bike, and he starts to appreciate the various ways that Nazism tells him he's the best. He's a white, German, cisgender, heterosexual man. Nazism tells him that he is better than everyone else in the world. And after some time of hearing that, he starts to agree.
Not in the way she walks.
40% of 18 to 29-year-old men voted for Donald Trump in 2024, signaling what many believe to be a significant rise in conservatism amongst Gen Z men. There are loads of articles talking about this shift, considering that that same statistic voted for Joe Biden in 2020. And while the shift amongst men is particularly significant, even young women have also shifted conservative in the last election. So, is being right-wing cool now?
We're the cool kids.
In recent times, a big cornerstone of the right-wing media machine has been to showcase conversions from left to right and to convince everyone that the right are cool. Leftism is lame, cringe, woke garbage, and the right are the sensible, attractive, and real ones. This appeal to an aesthetic of coolness and punkness signifies a shift towards aestheticized, or one might say vibes-based politics.
Aestheticized politics obscure immensely important social, economic, and political issues that transverse the culture wars and could manifest opportunities for solidarity. Globalization, governance by corporate-state partnerships, and lack of purpose are all just a few such issues. Meanwhile, that aestheticization makes the culture wars worse by burying those cultural issues in exaggeration, cruelty, and idiocy.
Appealing to vibes, aesthetics, and coolness is important when the actual politics underneath aesthetics are so bad for the vast majority of the country. You may have more expensive groceries and no more healthcare, but at least you've got a really great beard. I've been seeing this sort of content a lot lately, and what does it mean? Yeah, picture on the right, you seem happy and you're in a relationship. So is the argument that being conservative gets you bitches? I don't know. There's also a pitch to make conservatism seem like an ideology associated with happiness. The man is smiling in the second image, and I guess presumably not in the former. Ergo, conservatives are happier. And I made a whole video essay about this, so I won't repeat myself too much, but this is actually more or less true. Right-wing ideology engenders happy thoughts by severing you off from empathy and encouraging you to be self-serving and individualistic. It tells you that actually you don't have to care about other people, and if you're part of a dominant privileged demographic, you deserve that, and that's not something you have to apologize for. And for men like this poster, I mean, it's hard not to see conservatism's appeal. A political ideology that favors entrenched power is going to be attractive to the gender that benefits the most from that power. It doesn't take an analyst to comprehend why conservatism is so much more popular in men than it is in women. Even with young women also having a slight swing towards conservatism, women are still 30% more progressive than our male counterparts. Women are also becoming increasingly less religious, while men are not. And there's all this analysis online pointing to economic issues and socio-political reasons, but honestly, I think it's pretty obvious. The existing religious and political power structures have, for all of history, been made by and for the benefit of men. It seems pretty obvious why we're leaving the church and leaning left politically. When the church relies on your unpaid labor and subjugation, you can either decide you're okay with that or you can leave. And of course, being in a religious structure and a political and economic world where you're in power, you're paid more, you're told women exist to serve you, power is attractive. It's attractive to be told that you deserve more than everyone else, that you are inherently superior.
Boys will be boys, and there's nothing wrong with that.
But just because power is attractive doesn't make it cool. The word cool originated during the era that swing kids takes place in. It's a term that became popular on the 1940s black jazz scene. And originally, it didn't just mean cool the way that we use it today. Cool was also used as a protest term. It was a way to express staying cool under oppressive, specifically racist conditions.
Cool is a symbolic word that emerged in the post-war era as an emblem of social and cultural resistance against defenders of the status quo and social norms, people considered uncool almost by definition. Jazz musicians became symbols of freedom, agency, and possibility for writers, painters, and musicians around the world. The jazz saxophonist Lester Young, the star soloist of the Count Basie Orchestra, was the first to say, "I'm cool," in reference to a state of mind. Young's use of the phrase also encoded a certain protest during the Jim Crow era of racial segregation. "I'm cool" meant, I'm keeping it together, in mind and spirit, against oppressive social forces.
So it feels especially ironic to have those doing the oppressing co-opting this aesthetic. But conservatives have been trying to co-opt an aesthetic of progressivism for a very long time. They will say things like, it's more controversial to be conservative or white or Christian in America today than being left-wing or queer. They will say that they are punk and that they are now the oppressed class in need of support. As Umberto Eco writes in his 14 Signs of Fascism, thus at the root of eternal fascist psychology, there is the obsession with a plot, possibly an international one. The followers must feel besieged.
That there's a chance to beat the bad guys and to win.
In Swing Kids, Christian Bale's character slowly maneuvers his thinking from, I must defend the Jews who are under threat, to, the Jews are a threat to me as a white German. Similarly, right-wing Christians in America will say that they are under threat both at home and abroad. I was recently telling a conservative family member that as a British American living in London, I felt scared to go home as a queer leftist, given the current political climate. And she said, well, we're scared too, since white Christians are being targeted and gunned down just for our innocent beliefs. And she was, of course, referring to Charlie Kirk. Then there's Nicki Minaj's recent promotion of Donald Trump's claim that Christians specifically are under threat in Nigeria, which the Nigerian government themselves had to come out and say, this isn't happening. And while there is real discrimination towards Christians in some parts of the world, it is not this specific politically convenient discrimination that Nicki Minaj is talking about. This imagined religious discrimination abroad reflects the imagined religious discrimination at home. Conservatives need to believe that they are the ones under threat from the non-religious, from wokeism, from transgenderism claiming their children. It doesn't matter in this instance what the truth is. It doesn't matter that white Christian nationalists are the dominant political entity in the United States, the ones holding all the power, while many others are discriminated against and oppressed by their very group. Statistical realities aren't important here. What's important are vibes, and the vibes need to suggest that conservatives are the real victims at all times. There's something telling about conservative media stars like Candace Owens being repeatedly caught in lies, and conservative personalities like Elon Musk being community noted on his own platform, and the president himself being caught in mistruths over and over and over again. Facts don't care about the vibes.
Social media stars do not value truth, if they value it at all, for its inherent value, but for the value it can add to their aesthetic. They fetishize science, technocrats, and facts, and unintentionally undermine those same things. Deeply felt resentments and fantasies that feel emotionally correct foster conspiracy theories. Even views that begin fairly well-grounded often wander into conspiracy territory when people begin to value the views as aesthetic accessories rather than for their empirical or rational merit. After all, it's difficult to give up or change a view that is part of your identity, and your views become precious facets of a narrative of reality starring you.
If there is anything that truly exemplifies the state of modern conservatism, it's a culture of celebrities creating more or less a lore of manufactured struggles, histories, and value systems. Erica Kirk and Nicki Minaj had a 35-minute long conversation that failed to do anything other than regurgitate catchphrases. In this interview, rather than offer insights about what conservatism is doing to help the American people, they simply go through the rinse and repeat list of right-wing buzzwords and attacks on the left, hating on trans people, telling men to be men, and, in what truly felt like a surreal fever dream, calling the president handsome and dashing. Rather than discuss conservative policy, they discuss conservative characters. They hype up personalities rather than politics.
What Trump did that was new was to, rather than simply claim to represent the interests of his base and hype up their fears and resentments, he became, thanks to the complicity of social media and mainstream news organizations, the star of a 24/7 soap opera adaptation of their resentments. Rather than expressing a desire and framework for a new kind of society, many alienated Trump voters rallied behind a vulgar, vain anti-hero, simply because he was hated by all the people who hated them. Trump was not only admired, but absorbed. Trumpism was not only a political movement, but an aesthetic self-expression of his supporters.
This administration, I can relate to them. When I hear them speak, I know that they're one of us. Like, I know that they're not... Don't you guys agree?
I feel that Nicki Minaj's recent so-called conversion to right-wing politics is also part of this aesthetic alt-right celebrity culture. I don't know that Nicki Minaj is necessarily a left-wing to right-wing convert. She did certainly express anti-Trump views in the past, but she also has rapped about being a Republican. There's evidence that she just did the Turning Point appearance for some quick cash. There's evidence that maybe, she's always been right-wing, and there's lots of evidence that maybe she's not a super great person and never was. Not to mention the COVID vaccine makes your balls big thing, but I feel like that's getting off track. Nicki Minaj's personal politics don't really matter. What matters is that she's contributing to the vibes. Does the COVID vaccine make your balls big? Of course not. But do famous people creating, albeit totally nonsense reasons to reject the COVID vaccine, cause people uncertainty? Absolutely. The vibes are not totally random. They are, like I talk about in my Common Sense video, something carefully curated and planned upon as a populist tool. The vibes are meant to be the common will: anti-wokeism, anti-immigration, anti-intellectualism, anti-elitism. But the truth is that the vibes are what Umberto Eco refers to as TV or internet populism, in which the emotional response of a selected group of citizens can be presented and accepted as the voice of the people. As I mentioned at the start of this video, a big focus of right-wing media lately has been a focus on conversions from leftism to conservatism, making the left seem crazy, moralizing, and unattractive, often literally, making the left seem repulsive, leaving people with no other choice than to join the sensible right. But as I've said before in my videos, conversion does not give validity to belief. Christian Bale's character in Swing Kids didn't see the light or come to some deeper understanding of the world through learning the truth. He was given a nice new motorbike. He was granted epistemic relief. He was granted empathetic relief. There's a telling scene where his friend, whom he's argued with in the past but ultimately always stood by, he's gotten into fights for this friend. But when he's truly converted, fully crossed over to Nazi ideology, he abandons his friend, who ultimately unalives himself. You can tell that he's kind of relieved. He doesn't have to keep defending his vulnerable disabled friend anymore. He doesn't have to care. He can join in making fun of his friend's disability.
What was that speech all about? The Jews and the gypsies? What about the and that's who you belong with.
I would rather belong to anyone than belong to the Nazis like you do.
Yeah, well, that's because you've got everything backwards. You always said I was the stupid one. Nazis go anywhere they want, do anything they please. Everybody gets out of our way. So who's the smart one, Django man? If I were you, I wouldn't worry about anybody but myself, because we're coming after you next.
Life is easier for him when he takes the motorbike, leans into his privilege, and doesn't have to deal with the burden of caring. Rumor has it that Nicki Minaj may have to sell her mansion soon. There's a video where Lizzo implies that Nicki Minaj just did the Turning Point appearance for some quick cash.
You're about to see an influx of people who see that it is more profitable and more beneficial to join that side. You're gonna see it. It already started, and it's gonna continue. This is his first year. This is Trump's first year. There's money behind everything. There are privileges behind every move people in these positions make. And I'm not surprised.
And this definitely makes sense. Watching the interview, Nicki does not seem super invested in what she's saying. But who knows, maybe she does believe everything that she's saying. And at the end of the day, whether the vibes are paid for or believed in, they are still being disseminated, and that's all that matters to power. The vibes don't want you to think about power. They don't want you to think about politics. They don't want you to think. They want you to feel anger at wokeism, resentment at having to address the various privileges you may have, happy that you don't have to feel empathy for the various injustices in the world.
Thinking is a form of emasculation. Therefore, culture is suspect insofar as it is identified with critical attitudes. Distrust of the intellectual world has always been a symptom of fascism. From Göring's alleged statement, quote, "When I hear talk of culture, I reach for my gun," unquote, to the frequent use of such expressions as degenerate intellectuals, eggheads, effete snobs, universities are a nest of rats.
Are the liberal elites in the room with us now? Do they own Twitter? Embracing power can never be cool or punk or radical or subversive, but it can certainly be popular. And we're living in an age where the aesthetics of power are becoming sublimated into popular feelings of resentment towards immigrants, trans people, wokeism, and elitism, distracting us from the actual politics of power and the ways that they're hurting almost all of us. So just remember, while those in power want you to feel cool doing their dirty work, they don't actually care about you. And their politics reflect that. In the words of a musician whose music I once enjoyed, these bitches pussy and they don't do shit. So stop giving them your airtime, cut the cords on TV populism, and start thinking about actual policies that affect real people with real needs.
What's the matter with all of you? Can't you see what's happening? Are you afraid to look? We are murdering Austrians. Next it will be the Czechs, and then the Poles, not to mention the Gypsies and the Jews, and it's unmentionable. Do you think that just because you're not doing it yourself, that you're not a part of it? Well, I'm sick and tired of doing my part. And now you want to hear a song. You need someone to lift your morale. Well, I won't! Won't.
Dance, as interpreted by Paul Valéry and in the guise of Steve Paxton's contact improvisation, there is a third entity between the two dancers. The leader is the movement. So once it gets into momentum, you very clearly have something to follow, which is neither one of you leading. It is the momentum that has been established. It's the reality that you're in that is the entity, the flow, the danger, the survival of the graceful capitulation to whatever event occurs. It reveals a form of human activity that creates new worlds without those worlds being separate from the moment of dance. These dance-created worlds display a way of being in the world that is free in the moment of their expression. They are not subservient to any purpose or object beyond themselves, without thereby being completely free. In dance, an anarchy is revealed. But as this anarchy can be revealed, so too it can be covered over. At one moment in Steve Paxton's life as a creative dancer, he called the latter contact improvisation. In the political sphere, we call the desired institutional form anarchism.